Hello, everyone. This is Volts for November 13th, 2024. Residential solar is becoming residential solar plus storage plus VPP. I'm your host, David Roberts. Last month, I was in Brooklyn for the third annual DERVOS conference, celebrating distributed energy resources, or DERS. It was truly a blast. Most conference sessions are, if we are being honest, boring. Someone droning on in front of a PowerPoint slide with too much text on it. But these were different, real, urgent discussions among people operating at the cutting edge of technology, business, and regulation. Not only was everyone on stage involved with fascinating work, everyone in the audience seemed to be. I don't think I've ever experienced a higher concentration of interesting people. If you can make it next year, it is highly recommended. Anyway, at the event, I had the pleasure of interviewing Mary Powell, the CEO of Sunrun. Powell was on Volts last year. This conversation was a chance to catch up with her about what has changed since then, which, it turns out, is a lot. It was cool to hear about this market shifting toward whole home electrification and virtual power plants. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did.
All right, without further ado.
Hello, everyone.
What a fun chair setup. Woohoo! Hi! Let's go.
I've been joking this is the greatest concentration of Volts guests ever assembled in one place. So I've had many of you on my pod, and many of you will come on the pod in the future. So welcome to everyone. I'm just going to jump right into it. So, Mary, 2-3 years ago, you could have described Sunrun pretty simply as a company that sells solar panels to people and puts them on roofs. I don't think that captures what Sunrun is anymore. So what is Sunrun? What kind of business are you?
Yeah, we have evolved a lot. So first of all, it's so nice to be with all of you here today, and so awesome to be with you in person, and let's go Volts. Let's cheer, come on, woo!
I'm gonna do the Elon thing.
Exactly. That's awesome. We need you, we need your voice, we need everybody in the audience. I've been doing this work of what I've called accelerating a customer-led revolution to a better energy future for all of America for a long time. And the work that you're doing every single day to amplify and get the word out there that we're not waiting for technology and innovation to happen. It's happened, it's here, and we need to radically accelerate it. So it's just awesome to be here. And I want the Sunrun team, stand up Sunrun team, because I was actually telling them, let's give them a round of applause. Let's go. Right there, those are our warriors that are helping to take us from, as you said, a company that for a long time, frankly, sold solar panels and put them on people's roofs. And that was a good thing for a while, right? But ultimately, what we really need to be is a clean energy lifestyle company. And what we really need to do to accelerate this dramatic consumer-led revolution is make it super easy for customers to adopt technologies that can not only improve and transform their own lives, but then through that magnificent team I just had stand up, that can be leveraged, all those technologies, to make the grid more affordable and resilient for all. So yes, we made a hard pivot. I made a hard pivot when I came to Sunrun from a company that sold solar and about 12% of the time sold you something else. So about 12% of the time, a customer bought a battery. That was the primary thing. Occasionally, then we had them buy an EV charger. Occasionally some other things, and we radically focused on how do we amp up, particularly storage, right? To really create that incredible distributed power plant that we now have. And I'm proud to say that now 56% of our installed customers have solar plus storage. So, and not just that, like that, it's amazing. It's amazing. We've done that in a very short period of time.
You have some battery-only customers now? Is that a thing?
We're heading that way. We are heading that way. I think as I mentioned to you, I very much also want us to be innovating. We have that on our product roadmap to be providing storage as a storage-first solution for customers that may not have the right situation for solar or may just have a preference for storage plus other kinds of technologies like we're working with SPAN. So it's ultimately about having our consumers become part of that revolution and then have us work with them to turn their home and their electric vehicle into smart controllable load for them, and then using that same smart controllable load to drive down the cost of the grid.
So you say 56% of solar customers are getting batteries too. What about the EV chargers? Are they a meaningful percentage yet? Are they growing? How big of a piece of the puzzle
you know,
is it?
I would say it was really important to me that we start providing EV charging as a part of our offering because so many customers, as we all know, one of the cool things about solar and storage, but I would say maybe solar a little bit more, is it's really a gateway drug to additional electrification. So what we found, even when I was running a utility at Green Mountain, I always used to say, geez, these utilities are so short-sighted because really what happens is, you know, they go solar and then they want an EV and then they go to heat pumps. So yeah, so we launched an EV charger, if nothing else, just to inspire that thinking and accelerate that thinking. And we now have, you know, a couple thousand customers with EV chargers. One of the really exciting things, though, was also our partnership on the Ford F-150 Lightning. So yeah, woo, like it's really a big deal. Like I can't, this is what's fun about doing these events, because you get amazing briefing documents from your team and you find out things that you had no idea.
We did what?
And I knew that we were doing a really cool partnership in Maryland using our F-150s to support the grid. What I didn't realize is like one of those customers, just like one customer, with his Ford electric F-150 that is backing up the grid, he's chosen to do it so many times that he's gotten $1,700 in credits. Like, think about how powerful that is in accelerating the consumer-led revolution also to electric vehicles when we can scale that kind of technological solution for the grid that is also so strong value proposition for the customer.
Is it your vision that the electric vehicle charger becomes a standard part of the offering, or was that just sort of like a experiment off thing? Like, are you trying to push that into the standard customer package?
I would say what I want to do is meet customers wherever they are on the clean energy lifestyle journey. So our vision is we're launching a expanded solar offering as well, which I think will inspire more storage, will inspire more electrification in the home. And so my desire, frankly, is just to meet customers wherever they are on the journey with solutions. So I don't think it's so much as like pushing that everybody should have one, as much as becoming that beloved, trusted partner on their clean energy journey. And I feel like that's what I hear. I spend a lot of time talking to customers. I call customers every week. I work in our Lowe's stores. I've knocked doors with our folks that are out in the field. And you know, more and more what I hear is customers want exactly what we're trying to do, which is to be that trusted partner, to meet them where they are and provide solutions in some cases that they didn't even realize they need. I was in Massachusetts last week meeting with a bunch of potential customers. And you know, it was just fascinating to walk them through the journey of why they were initially interested in solar. And then by the end of the conversation, they're interested in storage, they're interested in EV charging, because they're thinking of it from the perspective of what are all the features and benefits I can have to make my life feel more stable, more secure, and cost effective.
One sort of negative question, we'll get it out of the way earlier. I just wanted to kind of ping you on what kind of damage did the NIM decision in California do? I know it hit your stock price, it hit the stock price of every solar company, I think. I know you've had to slash some of your teams. What's your take on that? Are you just writing California off and trying to go a different direction? Are you still fighting that battle? Like, what's your take on California?
So my take on that, it was just dumb. Like, my take was, it wasn't actually directionally, it wasn't dumb at all. Like, and I actually think some of the most exciting stuff I've seen around the country has actually been inspired by regulators. I ran a utility for a long time. I'm glad that there's more and more like little signs of life going on, but like the reality is like regulators are actually what's inspiring a lot of good stuff that has happened around our country. And so to me, what was painful about it was that directionally, it was good, right? Like directionally, the notion of getting more storage on the grid, hot damn hallelujah. I mean, I did that, as you know, as a utility way back in 2014, 2015. It's an amazing asset if we can have both solar and storage on the grid. The dumb part was, why do it in such an incredibly abrupt, abrasive way? Like that was, I mean, I remember talking to folks in California at the time, in the for what it's worth category of just like, hey, like directionally it seems good. This is not providing for a smooth transition. So Sunrun, I feel bad in some ways because I feel like we were disproportionately favored in that because we did have storage expertise and we really leveraged it to dramatically increase our storage expertise and to really pivot the company. But as we also know, a lot of, definitely the solar only sales dealers, the smaller companies, the mom and pops, like it was very, very devastating. And it also was at the same time as interest rates were going up, which also just compounded, making it a more challenging time to do such a abrupt transition. So it goes that old adage we all learned when we were kids. It's not what you do, it's how you do it.
So when you
how they did it was dumb.
When you say directionally correct, do you mean that you agree that solar was being compensated at too high a level?
No.
What do you mean by directionally correct?
What I agree with is no. And in fact, like that was part of the, separating the noise from the truth is always hard. That's why what you do is really important. So no, like the reality is how people were getting compensated for solar had already shifted dramatically in California. The part that was directionally correct was the encouragement of storage. Like that was the part that to me does make a world of sense. How do we inspire more customers and how do we make the math work for more customers to have storage? So thank you for that clarification. Again, having run a utility, we would never have been the first utility to we actually asked regulators if we could pay customers to go solar. And then we were the first to create a virtual power plant in Vermont with Tesla, with their power walls. And, we wouldn't have been doing that if A, we knew it wasn't great for customers, and B, if it wasn't a path to actually lower the cost of the grid for all. So the math that utilities do is still, that was my other frustration with the California transition is if you read anything about it, which I'm sure most of this audience did, it was all based on a look-back study. And I must have said to, hundreds of people, when can we start looking forward? Like, right? Like, when can we start looking forward? So it was dated information. Right? So we had so much noise that was inaccurate. Like one of the most profound was the notion that it's like wealthy people and it's being subsidized. Like, well, clearly you haven't been out talking to customers lately because like 50% of the customers we're talking to today are low to moderate income customers. Long-winded answer.
Let's talk VPPs. Everybody loves VPPs these days.
Yeah, let's go.
Hey, VPPs. Just to start with, how many, give us a sense of the scale, the percentage of what you've sold that you currently have enrolled in a VPP. Is it still a pretty small percentage of the deployed systems?
Well, again, I'm so glad I came here because I got to have lunch with my team. And oh my gosh, the scaling that this team has done in the last year is just, it's incredible. I mean, I'm an impatient person that wishes that the whole energy system was way further along than we are. That said, it's quite remarkable now to be like tens of thousands of customers are participating in programs. We had 16,000 in our California program, and we see a path to really ramp that up dramatically. So, we're above 20,000, and we are seeing a path to many more than that. And now that we're attaching at such a significant rate, we're sitting on top of 7.6 gigawatts of solar and 1.8 gigawatt hours of storage already.
This is what you've already sold and installed on houses?
No, yes, this is what we've already sold and installed on houses. So when you think about that, like from and again, I call them, as you know, I like to call them distributed power plants because there's nothing virtual about them. they're there. They're distributed power plants, and they again can offset peakers, and the grid, as you know, has 10% of the plants on the grid are there for 1% of the time. So having these, incredible assets behind the meter in homes, helping those homes and also helping the grid is powerful.
So if I'm a homeowner and I have Sunrun panels and a battery that say I bought a couple of years ago, but I'm not currently enrolled in a VPP, do you come to me and ask me to enroll? Like, are you going back to existing customers and saying, hey, it's us again, do you want to do this extra thing?
Yeah, they're all nodding yes, yeah. But yeah, we've actually moved. One of the exciting things this year that happened is we did move more to like an auto enrollment. So again, in California, the program that actually, it so happens my house was in, right? You basically got a notice saying you're going to be included in this program and you can opt out. If you stay in this program, you get $700. I think one customer that I still want to talk to, because I want to be like,
what's your
why?
deal?
Like, what's your deal? Why didn't you want $700? Because it also, we also say, it won't affect the performance of your storage for your home or for the reliability. So,
and you haven't run into any, privacy, I don't want you messing with my stuff type of
That's probably
reaction?
why that one, or it might have been 5 customers. I don't know. It was less than a handful. But yeah, I think there are always going to be those folks that say, yeah, leave me alone. But for the most part, yeah, it works very elegantly.
And so when you think in terms of a DPP, are there multiple discrete DPPs, or do you just imagine sort of deploying your entire installed base as a single entity?
Well, I mean, the way America's energy system is set up, it's not really conducive to dispatching your entire fleet all across the nation in different parts of the country at the exact same time, right? Because what we really have is a patchwork quilt of utilities, regional operators, et cetera. So, but yes, the vision is very much directionally that, again, we're now at a 56% installed rate of solar plus storage. We're moving rapidly.
Do you have a target? Do you have a target rate? Is your target rate 100%?
I mean, I'm a very practical person, so I think at the end of the day, I'm not sure that 100% you'll ever get. And again, I've sold enough customers myself to know that you're always going to get that customer that says, Mary, I live right across the street from that substation. And I've never had an outage in 20 years. And it's okay, whatever. What I do say to them, though, is another area why storage is so important. So I don't think we're going to get to 100, but I think we're going to get a lot. Because the other thing it can do, as we all know here, is future-proof you against regulators do love complexity. And utilities love complexity. And consumers, in my experience, don't love complexity. Your average consumer does not want to go home and think about their energy. I know maybe in this audience you guys do. You're freaking outliers.
Weirdos.
You're not your average American that I talk to every day. Your average American has maybe 2 jobs. They have a lot going on in their life. They don't want to think about it. They just want a beloved, trusted partner that they know is optimizing their home to make it the most affordable it can be, which a utility's not set up to do. So another area where storage is so powerful is that as regulators and utilities complexify everything, and definitely rates, it can also really help them because it can, again, as using California as an example, you can shift energy around and you have that customer's back through all of that complexity. So it gives me more and more arguments with the person that lives across the street from the substation.
Right. Well, that was sort of my next question. Like, if I'm a customer who doesn't experience outages or doesn't really view them as a problem, if that's not a motivator for me, are there other reasons for me to get a battery? Like, is the value that you can pull out of my battery for your VPP, sharing some of that value with me, is that enough to induce me to get a battery in and of itself? Hey there, everybody. Don't worry, I'm not going to tell you about a new mattress or push a credit card on you. This isn't an ad. There are no ads on Volts. It is supported entirely by listeners like you. If you'll indulge me for a second, I'd like to ask for your support. I started Volts because we're all surrounded by depressing news about climate change and misinformation about clean energy, and it's never been more important to share the stories of the real people on the ground doing the real work of transition, and all the ingenuity and courage and public spirit they are bringing to it. People are hungry to hear these stories, to learn from and find inspiration in them. I've heard from people who changed majors or careers after hearing episodes of Volts, people using it in classrooms and community groups, even state legislators who have passed bills inspired by specific episodes. Sharing these stories matters. It makes a difference. If you have found value in it and want to help me continue doing it, I hope you will join the community of paid subscribers at volts.wtf. It's about the cost of a cup of coffee a month. If you don't like subscriptions, you can make a one-time contribution, leave a review on Apple or Spotify, or just tell a friend about Volts. I am grateful for any and all support. If you're already a paid subscriber, thank you. And now, back to the show. Is that enough to induce me to get a battery in and of itself?
Not yet, but that is 100% coming in my view. So again, as a utility operator, yes, I was serving a customer base that wanted clean energy. I wanted clean energy. That was a part of why I leaned in so hard to distributed energy resources. But I would say equally as important was the fact that the grid is so economically inefficient. Equally as important is the fact that the grid is not built at all for the kind of climatic events we're having now. So yes, I think there's many reasons that within 3 to 5 years, and then you see AI is creating a lot of capacity demands. Electrification is creating a lot of capacity demands. Utilities have not really inched forward in how to deal with those demands in an economically efficient way, right? So the grid is as economically inefficient as ever. It's like 40% economically efficient, which means it's inefficient. It's getting worse. So what you're going to see is utilities, again, we've scaled it now. We're at least tens of thousands of customers in these programs. I have no doubt in my mind that regulators will likely be pushing utilities to leverage resources like we have in a very dramatic way in the next 3 to 5 years. And then that will open up the ability for us, like right now at the sale process, we don't have sophisticated data and stability of programs to be able to say, hey, why don't you go, and then you're going to likely also get X hundreds of dollars every summer, right? But as we are able to do that, that will absolutely open up the aperture of customers that will want storage and will put it in their homes. So it's a very virtuous cycle.
So the supply crunch pushes utilities towards DPPs, raises the value of DPPs, which raises the value that a customer can get out of a battery, and brings more customers, is the theory.
Yep.
Well, this is a question I've had about these DPPs for a long time. I don't even know if I can articulate it particularly well, but once for the consumer, the primary source of value shifts from resilience against blackouts, which is I've always thought is important in some places, in some concentrated places, but it's not really a universal thing. I wouldn't pay that much money because we rarely have blackouts where I live. But once the value is coming from the DPP.
Where do you live?
Seattle.
Okay. Yeah.
We have very good
Yep.
hydro. But like once the value for the customer is coming primarily from their participation in this DPP, what is the remaining rationale for sizing the solar and battery to serve that building's load as opposed to just maxing, putting as much solar as it'll hold, putting as big a battery as it will tolerate?
Have you been like spying on our meetings? So first of all, yes, that's actually very much the direction we're moving, because one of the things we find, I used to say when I was at Green Mountain, I remember hitting this point where I said to the team, oh my gosh, like one of the biggest challenges we have is that Americans are in kilowatt denial. Like they really are. Like they don't, I would say, 80%, 90% maybe of the high bill complaints we would get were not high bill. I mean, they were like, yeah, it's a problem. Like, you're using a lot of energy. I'll never forget this one guy I had to deal with. Oh my gosh, it turned out he had put a tropical fish pond in his backyard in Vermont. Like literally, we changed his meter. We had done all this stuff because he was convinced it was our fault. And there was a tropical fish pond in the backyard. So it's a real thing, and we experienced it even... I could tell some really fun stories. It's wild. Anyway, kilowatt denial, I love it. So yes, so we experience the same thing. A lot of customers, they go solar, and then they immediately start using more energy because they're feeling better about their energy. It's the same thing I found with efficiency light bulbs, honestly. I don't know if you guys know this data. Same thing. People who put in efficiency light bulbs, their bill usually goes up for a cycle or two because they feel so good they leave them on all the time. So we are very much trying to move towards future-proofing the customer's experience, future-proofing for the grid, and really moving more towards sizing and scaling to where we know and where we have the data that customers are moving versus where they are today. So we see that as incredibly important. Back to your point, though, on value proposition of storage, I mean, it is remarkable to think that for 90% of the customers we're selling to right now, solar plus storage, in many cases, they're able to do that in a way that actually still saves them a little money. And in many, like the vast majority of the cases, the worst case is it's a bill swap. So I would say like it still is a very compelling value proposition because it's not just about are you preventing yourself from having outages. It is about future-proofing at an equivalent cost to what you're already paying your utility.
I mean, is the standard just one Tesla Powerwall per customer? Is there a standard battery installation, or does it completely depend?
It depends.
And do you push like, why not 2? Why not 3? Are you pushing?
Right. Well, I mean, we want to meet the customer where they are. So I talk about customer obsession all the time. I think ultimately, like that drives the best outcome for any organization. So we do go through the process of meeting them where they are and trying to figure out what works best for them. More and more, you are seeing customers that want whole home backup. So again, you live in a stable area, most of California. I mean, I literally couldn't believe when I started like living in California at the lack of reliability and the cost. And the lack of reliability, particularly with like safety shutoffs, is just really profound in a lot of parts of the state. New England, you have a lot of weather issues. Look at Florida, look at Texas. So you're seeing more and more of that instability for customers across the country and that desire. So it really ranges. It ranges. But yeah, anywhere from 1 to 3, I would say.
When you think about a DPP, is there some ideal mix of generation and storage? Some ideal mix of solar and batteries? Do you want more batteries? More solar? Couldn't you theoretically do it with just batteries? Like, how do you think of the ideal mix for one of these things?
So again, like just real time. So if you're just looking at it from the lens of customer obsession and providing the best value proposition for a customer, I'm gonna say solar plus storage is the best solution. And then I'm also gonna say it's the best solution from a grid perspective. Because again, I've lived through multi-day outages in California. And, I was a Sunrun customer before I was Sunrun CEO. right? And I had solar plus storage plus EV charging, and I actually had a span panel, right? So not only could I go for literally probably weeks, but I also had the ability, all like, this is always where I sound like, I feel like I'm like running a commercial, but like, I feel like Crazy Eddie from New York years ago. I don't know if anybody remembers Crazy Eddie, but it's like all for one easy monthly payment. Like I had all of that.
No money down.
No money down. Well, no, seriously, no money down. One easy monthly payment that was more than paid for by my savings from my utility bill. And I had the ability, like with solar plus storage, like I didn't have to have the worry of, well, SDG&E said it's going to be, well, they originally said it was going to be 24 hours, then it was 48, then it was 72, and I didn't have to worry if it turned into a week because I had the ability also to monitor it and then also make the decision, okay, I'm not going to charge the car, but I am going to run this pump. Like, that's the kind of amazing technological innovation we can do that improves the lives of customers, but then also becomes a really valuable grid asset. So I think solar plus storage is still the killer app. It's better as a grid resource too. I'd rather, if I had to choose, I'd rather have both. But again, I want to be able to meet customers wherever they are. So if there's a customer that has a totally shaded roof and nothing fits for solar, I'd love as a clean energy lifestyle company someday to be able to offer an amazing solution for them too.
Also in terms of DPPs, you're using the customer's rooftop solar and their home battery, but the big powerhouse for most customers is their vehicle, the EV. Like the EV batteries are bigger than home batteries. And so it seems to me like if you're competing in the DPP space, whoever gets to the cars first wins.
Yeah, we got to the cars first.
Yeah, I know you've done this thing.
We got to stay there, but we got there first.
You've done this thing with, 3 customers and their Ford trucks, which is not nothing, but like, is that part of the business plan to go after, like, to be the one who does the charger so you can deploy the car as part of your DPP?
Yeah, I mean, yes, you're right. It was a proof of concept what we're doing, but our partnership with Ford on their F-150 was ahead of the pack, right, on the bidirectional charger. Ultimately, again, what I see as most important is to be the one that actually owns the space around controlling the electric load of the home. So if you have electric vehicles then that are a part of that overall infrastructure, and you have the ability to work with the customer to coordinate all of that load in a way that works best for you with rate structures, best for you for your life, and then dispatch that. So yes, we're working very much on that space of being in that more sophisticated place of being able to control whole home and transportation load.
So when you say whole home, I mean, is there a limit to the devices that you could control? Like you could see yourself eventually coordinating not just solar and batteries, but the water heater and the stove and the heat pump and everything. You're gonna
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I was really pleased to have us. Again, we're learning as we go, but we were one of the first to deploy span panels because again, there's multiple solutions, but that's one powerful solution that's available now that gives a more sophisticated customer experience and also provides you with more sophisticated capabilities of control if you work in partnership with those customers.
So you were selling span panels with your...
Yeah, we're doing very well with them in Texas right now.
Texas, everybody. This room loves Texas. It's the weirdest.
Go Texas.
The weirdest
Texas
thing.
Likes to go big, so let's hope they go big with DERs.
Well, so there's no limit to the number and variety of appliances and devices you can control. Is there a limit to the appliances and devices that you plan to sell? Like, would you sell a heat pump alongside the rooftop solar in the battery at some point? Would you sell a heat pump hot water heater? Like, do you have any limit to sort of like the home electrification products?
I think we started talking about ourselves as a clean energy lifestyle company for a reason.
Right.
So it was so much about not being your mother's solar company but really transitioning into a company that was about providing a suite of clean energy technology products to improve your life, take advantage of electrification, and then turn all of that into an asset that works for you and works for the grid. So everything is open. We're having lots of conversations about what that means and what that could look like. Whether it's as simple as just simple partnerships where, you're a Sunrun customer, so, in your app, we just actually deployed something on our app the other day that was such a cool momentum building thing for storage. Just on our app, we like rolled out a push this button if you're interested in doing a storage retrofit, because the vast majority of our customers still are solar only because of our legacy.
Right.
And we literally had just hundreds and hundreds of pings right out of the gate. So as we think about our app experience and our future, and we think about providing more opportunities for engagement for customers, it could be something as simple as a partnership where you get a discount if you want to go with XYZ, and then it creates opportunity for us. But it's, our core right now is looking at how do we set up the generation capacity for the home and the transportation, and how do we set up the storage capacity for the home and ultimately transportation.
I guess this is sort of a variation on that question, maybe take it a little bit more abstract and get a little speculative with it. But, especially over the last year or two, I see people coming at this space from all different directions. Like some people are just selling batteries or just selling heat pumps. Some people are coordinating this appliance or that appliance, or just thinking about vehicle to grid with the vehicle. And then there's a whole host of companies that are trying to make it easy for the customer to do whole home electrification. There's lots of different sizes and angles on this same market. And it just seems to me I don't know anything about business, but it seems...
then keep going.
It seems to me like this is a market that is crying out for some level of
simplification,
vertical integration.
Yep.
There's going to be some sort of Google or Tesla that comes along, and you get the little branded heat pump and the branded solar panels. So it's a seamless, you're sort of one-stop shopping. There's one company. What level of vertical integration do you think is going to end up happening here? And are you going to try to be that?
So we see the world similarly. We do. And I actually think the fact that we are vertically integrated, we own sales, we own the operations, we have the technology, we have the product relationships, we have the depth of experience, we have the financing arm. I think it puts us in an enviable position for sure. And, to your point, even the pilot I did way back when in Vermont that Bill McKibben wrote about in the New Yorker, right? It was for the exact same reason that you highlight. I was saying the fact that we're coming at consumers from so many directions is actually confusing them and slowing down the energy transition. Because I found consumers, even in little old green Vermont, right, that were paralyzed because they're like, should I invest in efficiency? Should I do the weatherization? Should I do the so they kind of froze. And
I'm a homeowner frozen in that exact position.
Let me help you.
As we speak.
Right, exactly. So it's almost like their desire to want to make that next step was slowing them down because so that's literally what we did at the Burkowski's house in Rutland, Vermont, right? Was we did the full suite for what we were trying to get to was actually then when I stumbled upon Sunrun, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so much easier to do it at Sunrun. First of all, because we were a utility and nobody really wants a utility ultimately to do that because we're monopolies. But it was a proof of concept, right? To show that really what we needed to do was give the Burkowskis a transformation and have it be one easy monthly payment. That's what moves consumers. So this is your suite of options. This is how you could do it. You could walk out of Best Buy with $149 a month or $699 a month, right? It's how do we bring that to the clean energy experience?
There is an argument to be made, I wouldn't make it, but it's there to be made, that if consumers are confused, and what you need is a single trusted point of contact through which to do all of this, you could make the argument that the utility is exactly that entity, and that utilities are either going to be in the way of all this, or you put them in charge of it, let them rate base it, and then give them the incentive to do it. What's your take on that?
Well, my take on that is, the first thing is like they're not trusted. So like, no, I mean, and honestly, like running a utility, the first thing I set about to do was to have us become trusted, because we weren't. And we did go from like 50% customer satisfaction to 94% and 92% trust year over year over year. We were an outlier, still an outlier. So they're not. And then the other thing I would say is like, let's let the market work for customers. So even with what we did, we were trying to do it in a way, I think we were the first to create the BYOD, bring your own device, right? Because we were trying to do it in a way that encouraged innovation and new suppliers. So the challenge was saying utilities should be in the position of providing new, cool product suites of consumer technology. Is like, first of all, it's going to take them through a 3-year regulatory process. And by the time they launch the product suite, 2 of the products are going to be outdated, I'll guarantee you. So I feel like it's really built for the free market. Like we want competition. I mean, I want competition at Sunrun. Like we all like up each other's game. Like that's the point of it, right? Is that everybody's trying to outdo each other in being that next better solution for customers. So yeah, why would we not want that and want like a slow, like utilities are built for slow and no, so it's like slow, no, and then by the time, like even the Powerwall program that I originated in Vermont way back in 2016? I think they've just now scaled to maybe 4,000. Like it's not, so I think we need the ability for the market and innovators to work and for there to be a suite of consumer solutions.
Well, I can't argue with you because I agree with you. So we're almost out of time. Final question. For my final question, I want to loop it all the way back to the first panel. So there's all these data centers getting built. They need power. They say they need this very special kind of power that renewables can't provide. So they need steady, reliable, dispatchable power. And so they're building nuclear plants. Why aren't they spending that money on DPPs? Why, like, these are big distributed power plants that can provide always on, steady, baseload power. And like everything else in the universe, they're cheaper than nuclear plants. So what is the problem?
Well, the other thing is, it's just like, oh my word, like, I mean, I've built utility scale generation. Like,
you don't want to go back there?
It takes for forever. Well, no, the thing is, it's also like, the planet will be burned down by then. Like, it's just like,
it doesn't,
like I built Vermont's largest wind farm, which is not that large, by the way, because it is Vermont. And I had like massive support, massive community support. It still took like 4 years to build a tiny little wind farm. Okay, so like the thing that worries me is like, even if I said, well, that is a good solution, like it's getting slower, not faster.
Yeah.
Like we went from NIMBY to banana. Build absolutely nothing anywhere near anyone. Like that's like, we don't like.
I learned a new term at a conference last week. It was a conference full of like ski towns, Western resort towns. NIMSby, not in my second backyard.
Okay, there you go. That's why I think it's banana. I think so. But back to your question, like we're under NDAs, so I can't talk about them specifically. But we are talking to data center players, and there's a couple different like really cool models that we're looking at. One is about like leveraging existing communities where we already are, right? So if you're gonna put a center like in the midst of where we already have amazing resources, and the other is a more bespoke model where we could actually work creatively with a utility, which does we need those regulators. Are there how many regulators are there here? Raise your hands. I love you. Go
we love you
change
all.
the world. Please, we need you desperately. The system is built because we need you to force them. That's the system. So anyway, because one is really that could be very, very powerful, is more along the lines of what you're talking about, which is how do we go to consumers together and say, here, if we do this kind of distributed power plant, we can support this kind of economic development. We can have these data centers. It's a just radical collaboration that has incredible benefits for everyone.
And cheaper and faster than restarting a giant nuclear plant, I would think. Are the tech bros open to this? Because I feel like some of these guys, I feel like what they love about nuclear power is it feels virile.
Yeah.
Whereas virtual.
Well, there you go with that virtual word. That's why I've never liked it.
Not quite manly. It doesn't have hair on its chest. Are you running into any of that?
I got a lot of hair on my chest. Not really, but I thought it fit. I'm ready to take them on.
You would think of anyone speaking of Camus energy earlier, you would think if anyone would understand the cumulative power of distributed operations, it would be these tech companies that have built their fortunes on distributed computing, right?
Yeah.
So how's the reception been?
I think it's just the force of 100-plus-year-old way of thinking about things. That's why I always say, I am a big fan of culture eats strategy. Any company I've worked at or am leading, I focus a lot on the culture. Because that's how we ended up getting to the innovation at Green Mountain, is because I started on the culture. And we have 100-plus-year-old culture and way of thinking about it. And so as I like to say, it's not their fault. They just need to change. And that's why we need enlightened regulators, and that's why we need enlightened governmental leaders, and that's why we need enlightened folks to push against the force of 100-plus-year-old way of thinking about things.
All right, well said. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mary.
All right, awesome.
Thank all of you.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Volts. It takes a village to make this podcast work. Shout out especially to my super producer, Kyle McDonald, who makes me and my guests sound smart every week. And it is all supported entirely by listeners like you. So if you value conversations like this, please consider joining our community of paid subscribers at volts.wtf, or leaving a nice review, or telling a friend about Volts, or all three. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.